In this video, you are gonna learn everything you need to know about cue ball control. We're gonna first start with some basic physics, then we're going to talk about speed control. After that, we're introducing spin, followed by the golden rule for cue ball control. You will also learn the stun follow shot, it's a very important one. After that, we're gonna talk how to control the most important shot in pool, and then we're gonna put everything together with 3 nice little drills. So grab a coffee or 2, it's a long video, but it's definitely worth it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. What you can do is if you're just hitting the middle of the cue ball, no spin, what happens is the cue ball will just follow a tiny bit because the cue ball rolls forward. This means it wants to go into the same direction as the object ball, right? What else can you do? You can hit high on the cue ball, and if you're hitting high, you will generate even more forwards rotation. So this means the cue ball does not only roll, it spins forward, and that forward spin you can see wants to make the cue ball go into that direction. You can also play a stop shot. This means you're going to hit a bit below center, and in that case, the cue ball just stops in place. And the reason for that is you are hitting the ball full in the face. This means you're transferring 100% of the energy from the cue ball to the object ball, and the cue ball is just sliding when it hits the ball. It doesn't roll forward, it doesn't spin, it has no rotation on itself. It transfers 100% of the energy to the object ball, and this is why there is 0 energy left, and this is why it stops. We also have the draw shot. If you're hitting maximum low on the cue ball, the cue ball will come back into the opposite direction. And this is because now the cue ball still transfers 100% of its energy, but the cue ball has backwards rotation on impact, and this is what makes the cue ball move. Now imagine let's start with just a tiny bit of an angle. The first thing we're going to talk about is the stop shot, because it's the easiest one to predict. If you're now playing a stop shot, the cue ball won't just stop in place, because now the cue ball doesn't transfer 100% of its energy to the object ball. Before, you can see we're hitting it full in the face, but if the cue ball comes with an angle, and of course we need to hit the same point on the 11 ball, it's always that point no matter from where you're coming. But if you're coming from here, you can see we're just hitting a fraction of the ball, and this is why not 100% of the energy is transferred to the object ball. Of course, the straighter you are, the more energy you're transferring. The more angle you're having, the less energy you're transferring, because you're just hitting a smaller and smaller portion of the object ball. This is really important to understand. But what happens with the cue ball? If you now play a stop shot where the cue ball would just stop on a straight-in shot, what happens if you're having an angle? Well, the cue ball follows the tangent line. And the tangent line, we covered that in a previous video, is a very simple concept. You're shooting into this direction. This is everything that's important. You want to know in what direction the object ball is going to travel. And all you need then is to put just a 90-degree line from that line. You can see this is a 90-degree angle. And on a stop shot, the cue ball will always travel along that 90-degree angle. So just imagine it like this. Object ball goes into this direction. We have the 90-degree angle. Cue ball goes into that direction. So just a stop shot. This means the cue ball is sliding. And now the cue ball travels perfectly along that tangent line. This is very important. If we now give ourselves just a bit more angle. So now the cue ball will travel along the same line. The tangent line is still the same because the object ball still goes into that direction. And this is the 90-degree line. The only thing that's gonna be different, I'm gonna hit with the same speed, same rotation. You can see the only thing that is different, the cue ball now travels further without hitting harder. And why is that? Well, remember, we did transfer less of this energy from the cue ball to the object ball, and this is why the cue ball travels further. If we would, for example, have the 8 ball down here, we could just use the tangent line. Let's say we have very little angle. This means you would need to hit very hard, travel down table. Perfect shot on the 8 ball. Now I got a question for you. Where will the cue ball go if you're hitting maximum low now? Well, let's first play it, and then I'm gonna explain what exactly happens. Take a guess, by the way, where it's gonna hit. You can see now the cue ball doesn't come back like this, but it goes further to here. And there is a simple explanation for that. So when we're hitting the ball, the cue ball initially always, no matter what you're doing, wants to travel along the tangent line. But then what happens is the cue ball has spin and travels to here. The spin starts to grab on the cue ball and then brings the cue ball back into that direction. So if you're having very little angle, you could, for example, maybe bring the cue ball to here. Just like that. And this is not possible if you're having more angle. So just a tiny bit more. Let's play a draw shot here. And all of a sudden the cue ball goes like this distance further to the right. And the thing is, the more angle you're giving yourself, the further the cue ball is gonna drift to here. I'm gonna play one more shot and maybe you're gonna spot something which is very interesting. So did you see what happens? Little angle, we were able to hit here. With more angle, we were able to hit here. So the more angle you're giving yourself, the more the cue ball will travel along the tangent line. This is the only thing you need to understand. Zero angle, you can see the cue ball goes all the way back. So once again, we have a 90-degree difference to the tangent line. And the more angle you're getting on the ball, the closer the cue ball is gonna travel along the tangent line. This is very, very important. Let me show you what's gonna happen with high. And the good news is it's the same concept. So let's play a follow shot here. You can see how close I could hit to that rail. Now just a bit more angle from here to here. Still a follow shot. And we're only able to hit the cue ball here again.
But now the big question is, what if we keep the same angle and just play the shot at a different speed?
Once again, let's see where I can draw the cue ball back if I'm hitting soft. I can pretty much bring the cue ball to here. Now, if I would put up the same angle, just like that, and I would hit harder this time, would this mean I can generate more backwards rotation? So would this mean I can draw the cue ball a bit closer to here? Well, let's find out, and then I'm gonna tell you why. Did you see how far the cue ball hit down here this time? Even though I had more speed and more backwards rotation on it? The thing is, it takes the cue ball a bit to grab on the cloth. And the faster the cue ball is traveling, the longer it takes to actually grab on the cloth. And this is what happens when you're hitting hard. So when you're hitting soft, the cue ball travels to here and the spin almost immediately grabs and brings the cue ball to here. If you're hitting harder, the cue ball might even jump a bit, but it will definitely slide along the tangent line longer before the spin finally grabs and brings the cue ball to here. So you will have that kind of curve that the cue ball is making. So you can actually make the cue ball curve around the table if you're hitting harder. That's the same principle if you're hitting high. So let's play that shot softly with high. Cue ball hit here once again. Now the same shot. Harder with high. Same amount of spin, same contact point on the cue ball. And now the cue ball hit here again. And there is one more shot we didn't cover yet because we can also roll the ball in. But the thing you have to understand, when you're rolling the ball in, you don't want to hit hard because if you're hitting really hard, the cue ball is going to slide. So you can only generate a rolling ball if you're hitting really soft. And then it will pretty much not be 100% like a follow shot, but it just will roll forward. It will never drop back because it's just rolling naturally over the table. You can see this ball is rolling now. You can play it from a bit further away. You can see it's a rolling ball that is similar to a follow shot. All right, now let's have finally some practical examples how we can use all those principles in a real game scenario. We want to get from this ball to the 8 ball, I would say somewhere around here because obviously this pocket is blocked. What could we do? So if we ask ourselves what the tangent line does, we will see that the tangent line is pretty much going to here. So we want to leave the tangent line into that direction, right? So I'm going to play the shot and I'm going to hit low on the cue ball. And I don't really have a nice shot on the 8 ball, right? So what was the problem here? Well, the thing I did here is I hit maximum low on the cue ball, so I was drawing the cue ball way too much. So I have two options. First option is if I'm hitting harder this time, remember the cue ball drifts further to here and then comes back. So let's try the shot if we're hitting harder and drawing the ball. Well, we brought the cue ball further to here, but once again, we don't have a nice shot on the 8-ball. So we can't do that. So maybe what we could do is instead of hitting maximum low on the cue ball, maximum draw, we could just use a tiny bit, because drawing the cue ball doesn't mean you have to do the absolute maximum. You can also just hit a tiny bit below center, because then there won't be that much draw, which brings the cue ball to here. There will be less draw, which means the cue ball will also deviate less from the tangent line. And this is what we want to accomplish. We want to pretty much just bring it to here. So we just need to hit a fraction below center. And of course, remember, you have to hit hard because we have so little angle. Once again, we want to get from here to the 8-ball, and usually we could just use the tangent line, but you can see this time the tangent line is blocked. So what could we do? If we are able to go out like this, so leave the tangent line, hit the rail here with the right speed, the cue ball should go to here, and we're having a nice shot on the 8-ball. So let's play high on the cue ball and try to do that. And this is no good shot on the 8-ball. So you should know by now what I did wrong here. So first of all, what I did wrong is with that angle and high, you should know that we're gonna hit the rail right here. So in order to hit the rail here, we need less follow. We still need a bit of follow, but not maximum. So let's just hit a bit lower, just a tiny bit above center, and see what happens. And this time we could get much better position on the 8-ball. So this is what you have to do when you're almost straight. But what you could also do if you're having ball in hand, for example, instead of giving yourself that angle where you have to hit the right amount of high on the cue ball, and you can't just do maximum. Maximum is always easier to execute because you're just gonna hit maximum high or maximum low. But in that case, with that little angle, you need to hit a specific point on the cue ball to have the exact amount of forward rotation, right? Does that make sense? I hope so. So instead of being forced to do that, if you're having ball in hand, for example, give yourself more angle, because you know with more angle, remember, the cue ball will hit more here naturally, even if you're hitting maximum high. So I would say, let's give ourselves that angle, hit maximum high. And this time, a very natural, very easy and straight in shot on the 8-ball. Now we're gonna run this whole rack, 8 balls in a row, just with the principles we've learned in this video. What I like to do is I wanna have a rough plan before I start playing. And what is very important in 8-ball is I wanna have as my final ball, a ball that is not far away from the 8-ball like this, but that is close to the 8-ball. And I see this one is a really good one, because if I'm getting straight on this one, I can just roll that in, have the 8-ball into that pocket. So which ball is nicely connected to that one? Well, obviously you can see if you have this one straight in, you can play a stop shot, then you're rolling this in, then you're playing the 8-ball into here. So we decide this is our final group of balls, and we're gonna start with those balls here. And I would say let's just start with the 13 ball, because we already have that nicely set up. It's the easiest shot we have. And then just follow into the rail and a bit out for the 9 ball. So maximum high. Think about the speed you're hitting the shot with. Into the rail, and we bounced a bit out. Okay, now we're on a 9 ball. What do we want to do next? Well, if I'm making that 9 ball, I'm asking myself where the tangent line is going. The tangent line goes to here, which is no good. But we know if we're hitting a bit low on the cue ball, we can actually leave the tangent line to here, because the cue ball wants to go back, right? So if we're hitting low, bring the cue ball to here, then we can shoot the 10 ball into the corner pocket, which is nice. And we have that one as an insurance into the side pocket if we don't get a nice position on a 10 ball. So let's do that. So I'm gonna play a draw shot, trying to get a straight-in shot on the 10. So let's see what angle we have. Well, it's almost straight. We have a bit of an angle. If we follow the tangent line, we can see we're going out like this, which would be okay. So I think I'm gonna just play a stop shot here, a really soft one. That's good, because now I have a nice shot on the 15 ball. It's not perfectly straight, but I think what we could do is we can just follow the ball. We're very, very straight. So very important lesson, by the way. This is basically the same shot we had here. You can see we have this one where we have a bit of an angle in the pocket. It's the same here. We have just different positioning, but it's the same angle. So you should adapt. You should be able to understand that here we're gonna hit here. This means on that shot, you're gonna hit here. So I wanna play a follow shot, come into the rail, a bit out, and leave myself not straight on this one. This is important. I wanna think ahead. This is a very important topic in pool, to actually think ahead, because I wanna give myself a bit of an angle to use the tangent line to come over for this one. So just high on the cue ball. Right speed is important once again. Cue ball comes out. We have a bit of an angle. Not too much, not too little, because remember, if we had too much angle, then the cue ball has more speed and it might even travels too far over here. If we have too little angle, we have to hit really hard, which makes the pocket more missable. So once again, I'm gonna play a stop shot. I can also just try to draw the cue ball a bit like that. Both is equally fine. This looks nice. Now we have a straight-in shot on this one. Now you gotta be able to play a stop shot. Maybe a tiny bit of a draw. So remember, don't want to hit too hard. Now we can just roll that one in, not too hard, because we don't want to scratch. It's important. So play it in softly. I even had a bit of an angle so that the cue ball will never drop. Now we can make the 8 ball. So if you learned something from this video, I would highly appreciate a thumbs up.
Alright, now you should understand some basic cue ball physics, so let's talk about speed control in the next one. Cue ball control doesn't always have to be so complicated. Sometimes you don't need spin, draw, or really anything fancy at all. Just getting the speed right will already change how easy or difficult the game feels. That's why I'll walk you through this 8-ball rack to show you how small stroke adjustments can make the cue ball stop exactly where you want it.
The first ball we're gonna play in is that one. And when you're thinking about controlling the speed, the very first thing you have to think about is where is the cue ball gonna travel naturally if you're just hitting the center of the cue ball. And the good news is here we have a rough idea that the cue ball probably is gonna travel to here and then comes in between those two balls. And by knowing that, or by estimating the line, I can also decide where exactly the cue ball has to stop. Because you want to pick a point if you want to decide what speed you're going to play. This is important. So let's say if the cue ball travels to here, I would say in the best case, the cue ball stops around here, where we have this one into the side pocket, and a follow-up shot with this one, because we want to plan ahead. This is why we're going to change our speed, because we want to make the whole thing simple. So in that case, when I'm playing that shot, it's very important that I use the right bridge length, because for example, if I'm going all the way back to here with my bridge and I'm doing these kind of strokes, you can see, obviously this looks like I'm hitting way too hard. So we want to have a natural distance to the cue ball. This is important. So I would say these are the kind of strokes I want. And then I just want to stroke the cue ball naturally. Just a bit too hard, but we're still in a very good position on the 11 ball. Now, here comes a very important thing. You want to plan ahead, because obviously we're going to play the 11 into here, and then we're going to play that one into here, and then in the best case we have the 9 ball. But we have to think about the speed, because if we're just
playing that ball in and bringing the cue ball to here. Then we will end up straight on the 13 ball. And if we're straight, we can't bring the cue ball off the rail. So we gotta adjust our speed. So I would say we're just gonna play a center ball and a very, very soft speed that the cue ball stays off the rail so that we get off the rail with the cue ball for the 9 ball. So here, once again, I'm not having those big strokes, but here, since I wanna play a very soft shot, you can see those tiny, tiny backswings that I'm doing. Just like that. And because of that, the cue ball didn't travel a lot and we have a very nice angle on the 13 ball. Now, let's get over. We know if we're playing just a center ball or maybe a follow shot where we're hitting high on the cue ball comes into the rail and should come out like this, where we are first of all off the rail with the cue ball and where we might have a tiny bit of an angle on the 9 ball so that we can decide what we want to do afterwards. So these are the kind of strokes I'm gonna make. And I want to follow through the cue ball as well. I don't want to just stop. I want to follow through because this is part of my stroke and this is important for the cue ball to take a different path. Okay, this is perfect. Now we have 2 options here. First of all, we could roll it in really soft and probably bring the cue ball to here for the 12th ball. But once again, we want to think ahead, we want to plan ahead. And this is why this is so important in pool. You don't have to be a really good player, you can even be a total beginner. Planning ahead is something any one of you can do, and it will make the game so much easier. You don't have to improve your stroke, your aiming, your shot making, your fundamentals. Just by planning ahead, the game will become so much easier. So start from the very beginning to actually think about what you want to do on the table. And here, if I just decide to roll the ball in for the 12th ball, I have to somehow bring the cue ball to here for the 10 ball, and then from the 10 ball, I have to somehow bring the cue ball straight onto the 15 ball to play a stop shot for the 8 ball. And this is not easy, because here I have to manipulate the cue ball to bring it back, and then from here I once again have to manipulate the cue ball as well. So what we're gonna do instead is maybe get from the 9 ball to the 10 ball, from the 10 ball to the 12 ball, and then we have a much easier time to get to the 15 ball, right? We're hitting the ball pretty full in the face, so the cue ball will lose a lot of its energy. So we have to hit a bit harder. The cue ball actually comes over to here for the 10 ball. And I even think about bringing the cue ball all the way frozen to the rail. So I even think about that tiny difference of cue ball placement, because if it's here on the rail, I can go over to the 12. If I'm straight, I will leave the cue ball on the rail. So even think about those tiny differences in cue ball control, because this will make a huge difference. So this is just a center ball. I once again could go to here, but I'm a bit too close in my opinion. So I'm going to the rail. By the way, this rail bridge is something I covered in my latest video. So I'm just gonna play a center ball with the right speed and bring the cue ball to the rail. You can see, even though I didn't bring the cue ball to the rail, the cue ball just bounced out a little bit. At least I have a clear plan in mind. So now I know I just hit this shot a bit too hard. If I would have not thought about it and the cue ball ends here, I would say, yes, this is fine. But now I know, well, I made a mistake because the cue ball should have been here. But it's still okay. We can still work with the cue ball because we have a tiny bit of an angle. So what do we want to do? Once again, think ahead, because if you're straight on the 12th ball, then you can't really do a lot and you will have a very, very long and difficult shot on the 15 ball. However, if I'm having a bit of an angle on the 12th ball, then I can just either use the tangent line to bring the cue ball out. We covered that as well in a previous video, or we can just play a follow shot, come into the rail and end up straight on the 15. Good news is in pool you can also cheat the pocket a bit. This means I'm gonna shoot the 10 ball into the right part of the pocket compared to here, and this makes the cue ball go a bit further to here. And I would say if I'm straight on the rail or almost straight on the rail, just a tiny bit of the rail, I will have a nice shot on the 12th ball. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna get very close with my bridge because I just wanna have the cue ball move a tiny bit here. Just like that, just a bit of the rail, and you will see in a minute, this makes the whole thing so much easier compared to being here. So once again, tiny bit of difference in cue ball placement makes a huge difference, makes the game so much easier. Okay, now we need a bit of a bigger stroke because now we know the cue ball once again is hitting the 12th ball pretty full, so it loses a lot of its own momentum that it gives to the 12th ball. This means we need to hit follow high on the cue ball to make the cue ball follow to here. And then I would say if we end up somewhere on that line, just probably around here I would say, then we have a good shot on the 15 ball. I want to put a big stroke onto the ball. This is where I'm not getting so close, but a bit further away, maybe something like that. And then I just want to adjust my strokes, the length of my stroke and my follow through. Just like that. And we ended up almost straight on the 15 ball. So now we want to play a stop shot. This means the cue ball has no forwards rotation, it doesn't roll, no backwards rotation, you don't want to draw back, but it's just sliding. It gives 100% of its momentum to the 15 ball, and then we have the best possible 8 ball you can have in that game. So let's give that a try. I have to stroke it a bit harder because I want to keep the cue ball sliding when it arrives, so I can hit that as hard as I want as long as the cue ball is sliding. No backwards, no forwards rotation, then I will have a stop shot. So I'm gonna hit maximum low and I'm gonna hit the right speed that the cue ball slides on impact. You can see now I had a bit of draw on the cue ball. This means I hit a bit too hard, but this is fine. We still have a good shot on the 8 ball. And you can see how simple we made that whole rack look just by using the proper speed and just by thinking ahead, by planning ahead how you want to run this rack and by understanding what kind of angle you need.
Now you know about the physics and the speed, so let's introduce side spin.
In this video we're going to play the same shot but with 9 different contact points on the cue ball, so really interesting stuff to come. And we're starting with a center ball hit to have a reference line with no spin whatsoever. And very important, I'm always going to use the same speed, because a different speed would not only change the distance the cue ball travels, but also the path. Look how it differs, for example, if I play the same shot, but much softer. So this is our reference shot and speed with no spin on the cue ball. What do you think happens if we're using a follow shot now? Well, the contact point on the first rail changes because the forwards rotation makes the cue ball curve off the tangent line. This means the cue ball is hitting the rail at a different angle now. And because of that, the contact point on the second rail changes quite a lot. Now let's use high and right spin. How will this affect the path? What do you think? Well, the contact point on the first rail stays around the same because we're still using follow, but the contact point on the second rail changes quite a lot, and this is because the right spin will grab on the rail and change the outgoing angle. Surprisingly, it's very similar to the no spin shot. If we overlay the no spin and high right one, it becomes very obvious. So remember, a center ball hit and a high right hit, which is also called outside spin here, will very often lead to an identical path. Interesting question, what will happen to the path if we're using just right spin now? Well, the contact point on the first rail is now similar to the center ball hit because we're not using any follow, but the contact point on the second rail is really different. And of course, this changes the third rail contact really a lot, but why is that? It's because compared to the high right, the cue ball now comes from a different angle once again. And When we're adding spin at the horizontal center of the cue ball, we can add the most amount of spin. This is why now the right spin changes the cue ball's bounce off the first rail a lot more compared to the high right shot. What will happen with low and right spin now? Well, the cue ball doesn't deviate forwards of the tangent line, but to the other direction because we're drawing the cue ball, and this changes the contact point on the first rail really a lot, and therefore the contact point on the other two rails even more. But what will happen if we just use low and no spin? How will the path change? Well, first of all, without the spin we can add more low to the cue ball, and this changes the contact point on the first rail. It's almost the same principle as before, where we could add more spin without high or low. Here we just can add more follow or draw without the spin. And interestingly, the cue ball gets some natural spin from the object ball and the rails. This is why low and low right are very similar once again. But as I mentioned, this changes with the table conditions. Watch till the very end of this video to see how a different table will change this. Now it's getting even more interesting. What will happen with low and left spin, which is called inside spin here? The contact point on the first two rails differs really a lot, but the contact point on the third rail is pretty much the same. Isn't it interesting that different spin and even a different path can converge at the same spot? Just keep in mind the spin makes the cue ball slow down here. But will just left spin make a bigger difference then? Yes it will, because remember, the cue ball will curve forward of the tangent line. This means the incoming angle is different, which makes the spin not only grab better on the rail, but we can also apply more spin anyways, because remember, we're at the horizontal center again. Final question, which path will the cue ball take if we're using high and left spin now? Well, obviously we can add less spin now, but the high on the cue ball will make the cue ball go forwards from the tangent line even more, which results in a different incoming angle. And therefore the spin is more effective and the outgoing line will also be very different.
Now you should have a rough idea for cue ball control, so now let's talk about the golden rule. What I'm gonna show you in this video is, in my opinion, the most important principle when it comes to cue ball control and position play. And the good news is, once you understand this principle, you can pretty much apply to any situation there is on a pool table. That's the great news. And unfortunately, I see way too many advanced players make some of the mistakes we're going to cover in this video. But don't worry, if you're still a beginner, you want to learn about the cue ball, watch this video and learn the proper way right from the beginning. We have three situations: 9-ball, 8-ball and even straight pool. We're going to start with 9-ball, where we have to make the 7-ball, followed by the 8-ball and then the 9-ball. And let's start very simple and go back to the 8-ball, and let's remove that 7-ball and imagine we just have a ball in hand on the 8-ball. What would be the ball in hand way to get on a 9-ball? Well, I think the easiest way would be to just go over, play it into the side pocket and play a follow shot for the 9-ball. This is the easiest way. But we have the 7-ball there as well. And what you have to understand is, when you're trying to get position from the 7 to the 8-ball, that it's very difficult, obviously, to get that exact position where the cue ball just stops perfectly here. So obviously we're not gonna do that. So what is the second ball in hand position? Well, I would say, let's go back and use that as our second ball in hand position, because if I'm having that angle here, all I can do is just draw over and have a straight in shot on a 9-ball. And I would say this ball in hand position is very reachable if we're trying to get from the 7-ball to the 8-ball. We have to keep that in mind, right? So if we're trying to get from the 7-ball to the 8-ball, we're just gonna pick that point on the table and we're trying to bring the cue ball exactly to that point. To do that, we're gonna go 2 rails, come to here, and then in the best case, stop perfectly here. So let's give it a try. Low and right spin.
And the cue ball travels. It should stop right now. This was our point. Unfortunately, we hit the ball too hard. And now we don't have a nice shot on the 8 ball because the cue ball just traveled too far. I mean, it's still possible. We could pretty much just play a follow shot, I think, here. And try to get a good position on the 9 ball, which we didn't get. But the problem was, of course, not this shot, which of course was a mistake, but the real mistake happened right before. So let's analyze the cue ball path here. So the cue ball was coming approximately that line. And the problem is the cue ball has to stop perfectly on that point, on that line. Because if the cue ball travels too far, you see we don't have a nice shot on the 8 ball. If the cue ball stops a bit earlier, where we're perfectly straight in, then once again you're having a problem and you have to play a really difficult shot. Because you have to draw the cue ball all the way back. And of course, you can see even very dangerous with the side pocket, but you don't want to be forced to play that kind of shot because this is way too difficult, no matter the skill level. And this is, by the way, a very interesting reason why pro players just miss less shots. Not only because they're better at shot making, but also because they're not forcing themselves to play such difficult shots. So maybe we're gonna approach the whole layout a bit differently, and we're not just picking a point here, like I used to do it for a very long time. Just the last 5-6 years I've changed my game. Instead of picking a point, why don't we just first pick a line for the cue ball? And I would say if the cue ball is here, it's fine. It's also fine if the cue ball is anywhere on that line, because the angle will always be the same. Of course, you don't want to be so far away and you don't want to be too close. But I would say if the cue ball is somewhere in this area, then you have a nice shot on the 8 ball. So if the cue ball could travel along that line, that would be perfect. The problem, however, is how do we want to bring the cue ball along that line? It just doesn't work because the cue ball drifts to the right. So maybe we overthink our decision, our ball in hand position, and use a different one. Because the good news is we can also get on the 9 if we're having the other angle, if we're on the other side. Because if we're having that kind of angle, we can just bring the cue ball into the rail and over to the 9. And this is not really difficult. This is very manageable. So maybe we're gonna pick that line for our cue ball. So let's go over once again and decide on which line we wanna have. And I would say the cue ball is traveling along that line, we have a very nice angle on the 8 ball. And this is totally doable because you see the cue ball wants to go that path anyways. So very important, before you're picking a point, you want to pick a line where the cue ball will travel. This is the big mistake. You always want to pick a line first. This is the right line, and only now I'm going to pick a point on that line. Of course, I'm not going to pick that point because I'm way too far away. I'm not going to pick that point because if I overrun position, I'm pretty much frozen to the 8 ball. So I'm going to pick my point in this area, because if the cue ball stops here, it's fine. It's all the way fine to here. So I would say I'm going to go for this point, because if I'm a bit too short, it's fine. If I'm a bit too long, it's also fine. And this is what you always want to do. You always want to pick the line first and then pick a point on the line. And of course, as before, we're not going to pick a line that's not reachable, obviously, with the cue ball. So let's give it a try. Let's see. Here I'm going to use less low now and still a right spin. This is a nice line. You can see I overhit the ball and still overhit the ball. I got away with it. The cue ball now traveled a bit too far, but now I have the shot I'm having before. So I messed the line completely up, but I can still play that shot. You can see? So even the cue ball didn't travel along my line, I still got a shot on the 8 ball. So let's do it again. Let's give it another try. Just like that, you can see nice line. Cue ball travels along here, just a bit too short, but once again I have a nice shot on the 8 ball. And this is the beauty. The cue ball now traveled that line. If it would have traveled a tiny bit of a different line, it still would have been fine for a very long time. So you're not only not that dependent on speed control on the line, but also the line itself has a bit of room for error. That's really important. This is why you want to play that kind of shot like that. And you don't have to do a lot with the cue ball. You're coming over. And by the way, also here from the 8 to the 9, I'm picking, of course, not that line, because here I'm way too close to the 9 ball. We will see why this is bad if you're picking a line that is too close to your next ball. We will see that in the next example. I'm also not picking a line that leads into the side pocket because I don't want to scratch. That's why I'm picking that line. And if I'm then off a bit by the line, it's fine. And if my speed control is a bit off, it's still fine. So in the next example, we are about to play 8 ball. And you can see the 8 ball is here where it always is. And let's say we have this shot here. So what we could do in that case is a position where we're going with the natural path of the cue ball, coming over to here and then coming over to here. So we're picking that line on the table and we're picking that point here. Now, let's see how this turns out. So high, touch of left spin. This is fine. And you can see we got a position on the 8 ball. We're a bit close to the rail, but this is fine. But still, I don't really like that shot for basically the same reason as before. The line is not ideal here. And the problem is, if we're going that path, and if you're just hitting a bit too soft, then we're in no man's land. We have a difficult shot. If we're hitting too hard, then we're here. We also don't have a shot. So if I would go that path, I would definitely not try to pass the 8 ball closely, because then this effect will be even greater. So if I'm trying to go that line, and I'm trying to go so close to the 8 ball, the problem is the cue ball basically just has this tiny window where it's fine. Now let's see. If the cue ball is here, it's bad. If the cue ball is here, it's already bad. But now imagine we're changing the line and we're getting a bit further away from the 8 ball with how the cue ball travels. You can see from here, we have a pretty okay shot on the 8 ball. From here, we also have an okay shot on the 8 ball. So you can see by changing your target line from being so close to the object ball, just like I explained with the 9 ball over here, we have just this tiny room for error. If we're going further away, you can see it's much easier. So you will have less angle the further away you're getting. So if I would play that shot, I would try to basically pick, I would say, that line, because here I have room for the cue ball. But still, we're kind of crossing the line. So let's think that over. What if we pick the other pocket for the 8 ball and try to bring the cue ball on that line? Well, obviously, this doesn't work because the cue ball can't come out of the side pocket and go towards the 8 ball. But what we could do is maybe pick that line. Well, I would say pick that line. So make the cue ball come into here and then bounce out. And once again, we have the same principle. Once the cue ball is here, all the way from here, you can see this big margin of error for the cue ball, and we will always have a good shot on the 8 ball. So this is called going into the line, what we're gonna do. But once again, we were picking our line before, and then we're picking our point on the line. The line is not ideal. You can see the line comes out now more like this instead of here. But I would say even my line was, off by quite a lot. This is especially for a left-hander. A very, very makeable, a super makeable ball, to be honest. So you can see once again, you have more margin for the line and also for speed control. Let's give it a final try before we're going to the next example. Now a bit more low, a bit more left. And all of a sudden we have less angle and we have an even easier shot on the 8 ball. One thing that is important though, which I see making this mistake I sometimes see. So let's set it up again. Now here it's pretty easy to control the cue ball because we're pretty close to the 7 ball, right? So it's easy to judge the line of the cue ball and the speed. But what would happen if the cue ball would be here? Would you still try to go now into the line? I personally wouldn't, because this is awfully difficult, close to the rail. You have to get low into the ball, and the cue ball can easily get away from you, and we're left with a horrible shot on the 8-ball. So you have to identify if what you're trying to achieve is also easy to achieve. And this is a bit related, of course, to the cue ball's position, how far it's away from the object ball, and your own skill set. So for example, in that case, if I have that, then I would go for the path where I'm crossing the line. So I would say even here, what you could also do is try to hit the rail here and then once again have the final line go towards the 8-ball. That's a bit tricky though, because if you're not 100% certain to miss the side pocket, I wouldn't do it, and I would just go for that line. Let's give it a try. High, trace of left spin. You can see it's very, very dangerous, so I wouldn't recommend that. This was awfully close to scratching, so don't go that line, but use a trace more left spin or just hit a bit softer, and the cue ball will never reach that rail, and you will still have a good shot on the 8-ball.
Let's implement a very important shot for cue ball control, the stun follow. There's this one really important shot a lot of players seem to struggle with. That's why in this video I'm showing you how to execute it together with 4 scenarios where it's a real game changer. And make sure to watch till the end for a nice surprise.
So in the first situation, obviously we want to shoot that one into the corner pocket. Then we want to leave the cue ball here and have a straight in shot into that corner pocket. So let's try a stop shot first, where the cue ball doesn't have any forwards or backwards rotation and just stops in place. And you can see this is not ideal because we're not straight. Here would have been straight, and now we have, well, a missable 8-ball because you have to shoot that one into a blind pocket, and that one is easily missed. So now we know a stop shot is no good because the cue ball ends here, but we want to have it here. So let's try to follow the cue ball. This means we're hitting high in the cue ball, and this will make the cue ball go forward. So let's have a look what happens. Well, obviously this is also no good because the cue ball just follows way too much, and this is not the 8-ball you want to have. So how about we just hit a bit softer? So now obviously I'm trying to not hit as hard, that the cue ball stops earlier. So let's see how that looks. And now we have a great straight-in shot on the 8-ball, but the problem is the ball will never reach the pocket. So what can we do? Well, obviously we're gonna learn the shot that is promised in this video, and to understand the shot you're about to learn, we need to go one step back and understand the stop shot. Because what you can do on a stop shot is you can hit really, really soft and make the cue ball stop in place. Just like that. But at the same time on a stop shot, you can also hit a lot harder and you can still make the cue ball stop in place regardless of the speed. You can see that one was a lot harder. So why is that? Why can you do it on a stop shot and why can't you do that on a follow shot? Or maybe you can, you will see in a minute. So the thing is, on a stop shot, what you want to ensure is that the cue ball is not rolling forward when it hits the ball. It should not spin backwards. It should just slide. No forwards nor backwards rotation when you're making contact with the object ball. This is why you can hit at different speed, because it's all about the rotation. And the good news is you can also do that with a follow shot. You can hit at any speed and always make the cue ball follow just that amount, maybe a bit further, maybe a bit shorter, no matter how hard you're hitting. This is the great thing. Well, there's a bit more to that, but I will teach you the whole physics behind that shot at the very end of this video. Now let's just have a look at the shot. So what we want to achieve is that when the cue ball makes contact with the object ball, that it just has a tiny bit of forwards rotation on it. Just like that. Did you see the cue ball just was moving a bit forward? So what did I do? Well, I was just hitting a tiny bit above center. This means the cue ball wasn't rolling forward when it was traveling to the ball. It just had a tiny bit of forwards rotation on it. And this was why the ball also just followed a tiny bit. So you don't want to put a maximum follow, not maximum high on the cue ball, but just a tiny bit. And then the cue ball will just follow a tiny bit, even though when you're hitting hard. So Let's set the shot up again and give it a try. So here, when I'm playing that shot, I'm not hitting low, I'm not hitting maximum high, I'm just hitting a tiny bit above center. And all of a sudden, we hit really hard, but the cue ball just followed a tiny bit, and we have a perfectly straightened shot on the 8-ball. All right, let's use that type of shot in the next situation.
In this situation, you need to get from the 1 to the 8.
So let's roll that in first and see if we can just get a straightened shot on the 8-ball. So no high, no low, just rolling the ball. And the cue ball already followed way too much, and this is not a shot you want to have on the 8-ball, right? So let's play a stop shot and see what happens then. So I'm hitting low on the cue ball, and I want to make the cue ball slide on impact. No backwards, no forwards rotation. And once again, I don't think this is the 8-ball you want to have, because this is awfully difficult to reach and very easy to miss. Yeah. Missed it. But the good news is, as you may be already expecting, we're about to play the very same shot we were playing before. This means we're going to use some power. We want to just hit a bit above center, that the cue ball just has a bit of forwards rotation when it hits the ball, and then the cue ball should just follow a little bit. By the way, I'm going to teach you at the end of this video how you know where exactly you have to hit on the cue ball. And the cue ball just followed a tiny bit, and we have the best possible 8-ball you can wish for in that situation. That one is a really interesting one. So we're on the solids and we want to get position on the 8-ball. Obviously, we have to shoot the 1 ball into this corner pocket. And if this blocking stripe ball wouldn't be there, all we could do is just play a follow shot. So we're going to use high, make the ball, and just follow the cue ball down for a perfect shot on the 8-ball. But the problem is we have that blocking ball here, so if we would play a follow shot now and try to play the same path, the cue ball will just run into the ball and you have absolutely no chance to get on the 8-ball. So how about we use the tangent line? If you don't know what the tangent line is, watch one of my previous videos to see it in detail. Real quick, this right here is the tangent line. This is the 90-degree line you have, and that way the cue ball will hit the rail. But let's give it a try. Maybe we can get some kind of position on the 8-ball. Well, it's actually not that bad, but if we hit a bit harder, the cue ball comes out more like this, and I don't think this is a good shot on the 8-ball. So far we played just straightened shots, but we can also play that shot, of course, if we're having an angle. And what happens here is, obviously, you're gonna have follow on it. This means the cue ball won't travel along the tangent line, where the cue ball has no backwards or forwards rotation. It will leave the tangent line forwards. So let's give it a try and see how that looks. Then all of a sudden, the cue ball doesn't hit here, but it's hitting here, and we have a really good shot on the 8-ball. Okay, let's go to the final example. So here we have a ball where the cue ball goes into the rail after contact, and this might seem difficult, but it's actually very easy. First of all, what do we want to do? We want to shoot the 11 ball into the corner pocket. We want to bring the cue ball, in the best case, in that area, either here for the side pocket or here for the corner pocket. But what would happen if we would just play a stop shot? Take a guess. Well, here the cue ball comes basically straight out of the rail. And this is very simple to explain, because if you look at the tangent line, the ball goes pretty much that line into the pocket. A 90-degree line is basically like that. So the cue ball comes into the rail like that. And of course, it bounces immediately out. And this is why the cue ball comes out of the rail like this. If you would hit low, a draw shot, this means the cue ball would come off the rail like this. And if we hit follow, of course, the cue ball wants to go into that direction. This means the cue ball will come more off the rail like this. So let's play a follow shot and see what happens. And the cue ball goes forward, but the problem is we have that blocking ball here, so we can't take that path. So we just want to have a tiny bit of forwards rotation. This means the cue ball won't follow all the way to here, but it just will leave the tangent line a tiny bit to here, and then it should travel along this line. Nice. Almost a straight-in shot into the side pocket. We can also play it into the corner pocket. This is personal preference. There is just one big question left now. How do you execute the shot, and what other factors you need to change for a different outcome? And I personally play the shot 100% with feel, which should be the goal, but I'm gonna break it down for you. We have the cue ball like 1 diamond away, and just to have a reference, I'm gonna hit a quarter of a tip above center, and then I'm gonna play with that speed. And you can see the cue ball followed like that amount. The first factor we can change is obviously the easiest one, how high you're hitting above center. So let's increase it from quarter of a tip to like half a tip and see how that changes the cue ball. Now the cue ball traveled like twice the distance. Keep in mind, I played it with the exact same speed and I had the same distance, so I only changed one factor, which is how high I'm hitting on the cue ball. Now, big question is, if I would now still play the same amount of high, so half a tip, and I'm hitting softer, do you think the cue ball will follow even more when I'm hitting softer, or the cue ball will follow less? Well, that's a big question, and if you don't know the answer, we're gonna do a little experiment, because I was telling you in the beginning I have a surprise for you. Because if you have questions about pool in general or about that specific shot, I have a brand new website, the Sharivari.shop, which includes the Sharivari AI that was trained on everything I ever produced. So let's go to the Sharivari AI and ask that question.
And now I'm really curious because I'm asking this question for the very first time. By the way, while waiting, you can already ask your follow-up question. So my artificial intelligence is basically saying that the cue ball will follow more because the stun will transition into a rolling cue ball.
So now let's take it to the test. Is the AI right? So I'm gonna play the shot, half a tip above center, and I'm gonna hit softer. And in fact, the cue ball actually traveled further because the cue ball started to roll, and that simply means the cue ball had more forward rotation than before. Let's do another factor, which is not speed, but also distance to the ball. So if we increase the distance, you have to consider, if you hit softer, then the cue ball once again at one point starts to roll. So if I wanna here just have it follow a tiny bit, then I have to hit harder because I don't wanna have the cue ball start rolling. So here, I'm hitting just a tiny bit above center. So keep in mind, not only the tip position on the cue ball, meaning how high or low you're hitting, but also the distance and the speed that you're hitting the shot with will change the outcome.
There's also one shot that comes up all the time when the object ball is near the rail. So let's talk about how to control the cue ball there. Very important lesson. Alright, great stuff to come in this video. Let's dive in how to play the most common shot there is in pool.
Alright, another beginner drill that I always used to practice when I started playing pool, and even a couple of years in. This is still a very nice drill and a very important one because it helps you to work on the most important shot, which is at the same time the most common shot in pool. So what do you have to do? Just play the balls in order from 1 to 4. Once you're on the 4, all the balls get set up again. So this is basically an endless drill. And why is this so important? Well, let me show you by playing that one ball in.
First of all, you gotta be able to send the cue ball exactly into a certain direction, your desired direction, and you also wanna work on your speed control because you don't wanna leave the cue ball too far away from the two ball. You don't wanna travel any further because then you end up straight, and you don't wanna end up straight. You always wanna have that nice angle where you're going into the rail and back out. So let's drift over to the free ball. I always like to play those shots with low and also a touch of left spin. And then once again, I'm trying to give myself the angle where I can go into the rail. Now low right here. That was a bit too fat, but it's still okay. If you're playing that one with pocket speed and you have enough angle, this is always gonna drop on most table, especially if the balls or the rails are really sliding. So it's a very, very important drill, and you gotta be able to have, I don't know, at least like 12, 16, 20 balls in a row, because it's not that difficult if you nail that shot. That was bad, by the way. You can see what happened now. I hit that a bit too full, a bit too fat, and now I'm actually out of position, even though I can play a recovery shot. So this is a good example. This was caught a bit too thin into the pocket and a bit too hard, so now you have to recover, and this is usually where this drill ends. Because now I have to play that one with high right. I have to even cue over the free ball. You can still recover, but now you can see I'm further away, and this is what you don't want to have on that type of shot. You don't want to be that far away because, first of all, making the shot gets more difficult, and also having the cue ball controlled nicely gets a lot more difficult. Because if you're playing that with low, you have to hit at a certain pace that the low is actually still present when you're making contact. So now I have to hit that harder than I have, that it could be if I'm closer to the ball. And if that is not 100% clear yet, I'm about to show you. And I'm also gonna show you why I like to use that spin on those type of shots, even though it's not 100% necessary. It would also work without the spin. So let's take the stripe ball just because you see the rotation a lot better. And what I'm about to do is I'm gonna shoot into the direction of the two ball with low on the cue ball, and you're gonna watch the rotation on the 9 ball here. Just watch very carefully how the 9 ball spins. Did you see that? Well, if not, the following happened. The 9 ball, of course, had backwards rotation on it when it was traveling towards the 2 ball, but because I hit so soft, the 9 ball lost its rotation, it slided, and here it began to roll. So this would mean if I would have shoot from here to the 2 ball with that kind of speed, then I don't have any low left, and I just have a rolling ball, a rolling cue ball that doesn't bring us towards the free ball, right? If I would have shot the same shot from a closer distance, same amount of spin, same speed, the ball would have still had backwards rotation on it, and this is why it would have actually traveled this nice path here. And this is why it's always easier if you're closer. And the reason why I'm adding the spin on the ball is the spin just helps me to bring the cue ball a bit more out into that direction. Yeah, because we're using left spin, the left spin opens the angle like that. So if I'm far away, I can actually help that by using a touch of outside spin on those kind of shots where I don't have to rely 100% on the speed, on the backwards rotation, but I also have some supporting left spin that opens the angle. This is why I like to use that spin. If I, for example, would shoot from here, then it's totally fine to shoot without spin. So here you can shoot it without spin, that's fine. You can also add spin. The further you are away, the more I like to introduce spin because I'm feeling very confident with that. Of course, aiming with spin sometimes gets a bit tricky because I'm only doing this when I'm using outside spin. So let me show you one more time if I'm playing that too soft, what happens here. And you can see the cue ball doesn't come out like this. First of all, it was hit too soft, but the path is also the wrong one. All right, let's continue and actually shoot the shot the right way. So now I have to hit that harder than I have, that it could be if I'm closer to the ball, which doesn't only make the pocket smaller, but also, as I mentioned, cue ball control a lot more difficult. So low left again. That was okay. That was a good recovery shot. And now we're in line again. By the way, you can also mirror this layout because this is now for left-handers. That was good. Now, balls are set up again. So usually, you don't want to be forced to play those kind of recovery shots that I just had to play on the one. If you're playing it at a very good pace with the cue ball and a very good line, you will never have to shoot an awkward ball. And also something like that, let's try to overhit this a bit. Once again, something like that is not supposed to happen. Here I got really lucky because if I'm ending up perfectly straight, then it's basically over. But I mean, we got away with it. We have kind of a shot, not the shot we wanted, but of course we gotta be able to recover from here as well. Let's just play a high ball, but the problem I fear we're gonna have is that we're once again a bit too far away. This once again was a good recovery shot. Low left, bring the cue ball over. I'm also playing that shot with kind of a drag shot, which makes the pocket actually a bit bigger. So I'm hitting lower than I want to have actually on the cue ball when it arrives on the object ball. And I'm hitting a bit softer that some of the low gets actually lost on the way. This just makes the pocket play bigger, as I mentioned. We were on the free ball, right? So here I don't really need the drag shot because I'm really close to the ball. Here I underhit the shot a bit and all of a sudden you can see it's getting way more difficult than it could have been. Here I have two options now. I could just try to once again drag it and hold the cue ball, or what I can also try is to actually bump into the rail and back out, which is a bit tricky because the side pocket comes into play. So this, I would say, is personal preference. Here I didn't play that low as before and not that much right spin as before, and now I've finally ended up in prime position once again. So low left, going back over and over again. So you can see this is a really nice drill. It does look simple, and yes, it's pretty simple if you nail down the shot. This most common shot there is in pool. Here, a bit too little angle, so you gotta be able to identify the feel-good angle, which is of course not like here where we're having too much angle, not like here where we have too little angle. This would be my ball in hand angle, so now I have a bit less angle than before, which means I have to hit harder, which makes the pocket of course play a bit smaller. That was really bad. You can see not only does the pocket play smaller, you can also easily lose control of the cue ball. Here I could once again play a follow shot. What I can also do is just play a stun shot, but you gotta be careful. You can easily underhit this shot. It's a bit more tricky to judge. So let's see if I can still recover from here. Let's first of all set the balls up again. So here I probably have to bring the cue ball to here, make it bounce out. You can also try to bring it to here, but then you have to manipulate the cue ball a bit more. And if the ball is a bit too hard, you're bouncing out like this, you very fast will have no real shot on a two ball compared to here, where if the ball bounces out, you have a bigger area for the cue ball to end. So this would be just left spin here. Why can I just use spin here when all the time before I had to use low on the cue ball? Let me show you real quick by just switching and try to play the position from the 2 to the 3. So let's imagine we are pretty much straight on the 2 ball and we're hitting low on the cue ball. This means the cue ball wants to go back into this direction, right? So we're making the shot and the low brings the cue ball back into that direction because the cue ball always wants to go or rotates into that direction that you're shooting to. So we're shooting into that direction, but with backspin, this means the cue ball wants to go into that direction. If we're having a bit more angle, it's basically the same. We're shooting into that direction and the cue ball this time doesn't want to go into that direction because we're not shooting from here anymore, but it wants to go into that direction, okay? Does this make sense? If we use more angle, the cue ball doesn't want to go into that direction anymore, but into that direction. And the more angle we're having, the more difficult it actually is to bring the cue ball back to here, because the cue ball doesn't spin into this direction,
but from here the cue ball just wanna spin into that direction, and this makes it so difficult. Imagine we're having almost an impossible cut here. If you're trying to cut with backspin, then the cue ball just wants to go into that direction, and this doesn't really bring the cue ball out to here. And this is why we can instead just use spin, because the advantage is the more angle we are having and the more we're introducing spin, you can see the spin wants to actually bring the cue ball more to here compared to hitting low on the cue ball where basically nothing happens. So once again, look, with left spin, the cue ball wants to go more to here. Of course, my rails are a bit sliding because this is new cloth. On a club table, the effect is much bigger. You can basically shoot with left spin into the rail, and the cue ball can basically open like this. So what you have to understand, with that kind of angle now, we're hitting the ball, the ghost ball, the cue ball comes basically from that direction into the rail. And as you see, if I'm shooting from that direction into the rail with chalk on my cue first of all, let's try one more time, with left spin, you can see the cue ball opens the path. If I'm shooting from that direction with low, the cue ball doesn't really open the path that much. Okay? So this is why on that particular shot, I just want to use left spin. It's much easier. First of all, as you saw before, I don't have to hit so hard that I have the low on the cue ball present when it arrives, but it's also much easier to control and will open the angle much better here. I hope that made sense. If not, I have a great video about this whole topic, just 100% focused on that cue ball behavior. The link for that is in the video description. And now let's get back to the video. So this would be just left spin here. No low this time. Just because I'm having too much angle and it was almost over. I just caught it a bit too fat. I hit it really soft. This is why the one ball dropped. But because I caught it so fat, the cue ball lost a bit more of its speed and it hit a bit closer here. I think it even hit the point, and we ended up like this on the two ball, which is now horrible. Now we have just a tiny bit of angle to the left. So you have two options. You could really try to power that ball in, stun it out. But then once again, you get an inaccurate because you have to use a lot of muscles. And it's really not a whole lot of angle. So one more recovery shot you could do is the high right here. Be careful to not hit too hard because you can easily end up once again too straight on the free ball. But wait a second, I just told you I don't want to hit so hard. This is why I decided to hit the high right shot and bring the cue ball out this path. But if I would have just gone one rail and tried to bring the cue ball from here to here, you can see the short amount of path the cue ball has to travel. I played high right and the cue ball has to travel all the way to here and then all the way back to here. So I have a much longer path of the cue ball. Doesn't that mean I need even more power? Well, the short answer is no, because what you have to understand is that power, stroking power, doesn't necessarily equal the rotation on the cue ball. Okay, let me explain. First of all, let me show you what happens if I would actually try to stun the cue ball out, let's say to here. So I need to hit a tiny bit below center. I don't want to play a draw shot, more of a stun shot, basically a stop shot. And you can see how hard I have to hit, and it's very uncontrolled. I even hit a bit too hard. And even bringing the cue ball exactly out like this is very, very difficult. So why do I not like this shot? Or why do I have to hit so hard here? And if I'm now traveling the other path, I hit to hit softer. Well, the thing is, here I maneuver the cue ball or bring the cue ball out just with the speed I'm hitting, because there is no rotation on the cue ball. The cue ball just gets its path, or the path it's traveling, from the speed I'm hitting. However, if I'm playing that with high right here, the cue ball travels because of the amount of forward rotation. And you can see, if I'm playing the same shot with high and a trace of right spin with the forwards rotation on it, I can hit that shot much softer and it's way more controllable. So if you rewind and just compare those two shots, you can see clearly that this one was hit softer, but the cue ball still traveled a further distance on the table. And once again, as I said, here The cue ball basically gives all of its energy to the two ball, or almost all of its energy, but you can see the forward spin and the right spin will make the cue ball gain the speed compared to the stun shot, where the cue ball travels just because of the power you're hitting. This is fine here. Of course, besides going out like this, which is always the right shot in that case, what you could also do is to play that with high left here. But you're gonna end up a bit further away from the four ball, and you're gonna be too straight most of the time on the four ball. Here once again, high left. And it's a bit more uncontrollable. I once again got away with it. I'm not perfectly straight, I can always cheat the pocket. Playing with high, trace of right spin, not too much, because remember, you wanna end up with an angle on that shot. So, great exercise, give it a try.
And now we're gonna apply everything we know about cue ball control by playing 3 different drills that you should definitely try after this video as well.
This right here is gonna be a great lesson on cue ball control. There is so much to learn from this one, because I did this drill a couple of times before this take with live commentary, so I know exactly what's about to happen and what kind of things you're about to learn in this video. And it's great for beginners, but also for advanced players. So watch me talk about the angles I'm using, the spin I'm using on the cue ball, how I'm planning the whole thing, and just try to actively think while I'm at the table. So don't just watch, try to make your own plan, your own decisions, and try to question what I'm doing before I'm doing it. So what is this drill all about? We're starting with the 1 ball, we have to go to the 8, then we have to go to the 2, to the 8, to the 3, to the 8, to the 4, and so on. So long story short, let's give it a try. And one of the biggest mistakes I see almost every beginner make is when they're trying to get on the 8 ball, they're giving themselves way too little angle on the 1 ball. Because what we want to achieve is, we want to come all the way right around here for the 8 ball and leave ourselves a bit of an angle, because we want to plan ahead. We don't want to end up straight. We want to have an angle to come down table for the 2 ball again. This is important. And the thing that happens when you're giving yourself too little angle, and we're using no spin here, just a center ball, a cue ball kind of goes in a very, very bad direction, and it was hit way too soft. So what could you do? Well, you have basically 2 options here. The first option is, you can see the cue ball went a bit into that direction, so you can hit a bit lower on the cue ball, and if you want to make the cue ball come all the way to here, you also have to hit a bit harder. So let's give that a try. I'm gonna hit like a quarter tip below center and harder. And the cue ball changes direction, and it ends up once again in a horrible spot, because this is a way too difficult 8 ball. I mean, it would work to go down from the 8 to the 2 ball. I'm gonna give that a try, but this is very missable and not the easiest one. The good news is it's natural. I don't have to do anything with the cue ball, just a high ball. Made it, but I mean, it's an okay angle on a 2 ball. Here would be nice, because remember, we want to have an angle to go up table to the 8 ball again. But once again, this is way too difficult. The 8 ball is missable. The position on the 2 ball is not great. And getting from the 1 to the 8 ball is way too uncontrolled, because I ended up here, whereas here would have been ideal. So what can we change? Well, you need to understand that with so little angle, the cue ball loses a lot of its own momentum, because it transfers so much of energy to the 1 ball. So how about instead, we just give ourselves a bit more angle, and now just watch what happens if I'm playing the same shot, center ball, same speed. You can see how easily and controlled the cue ball goes up table. I didn't have to manipulate anything. I could just change the speed to change where the cue ball ends, and this is so much easier. So very important, give yourself angle. Speaking about angle, this is a bit too little on the 8 ball. Here would be nice, because once again, we want to come nicely 2 rails, very natural down table. And with this angle right here, which is a bit too little, I basically could do the same, but I need to use a lot of right spin here. So let's show you that. A bit above center and a lot of right spin. Then you come out like this, but once again, it's a bit uncontrolled. And I think, well, it's okay, but a bit too much angle on a 2 ball and a bit too far away. So I would say here would be ideal. So let's set the 8 ball up again and see what other option we had here with that little angle. I mean, I like the option to go 2 rails, but you need a lot of spin and this becomes missable, especially if you're not playing for a couple of years. So instead you could just hit a high ball. So let's see what happens here with just a follow. The cue ball now comes directly down. And this is a bit easier to control, but keep in mind, you are very likely, if your speed is not on point, because the cue ball traveled to here, it needs to stop here. If your speed is not on point, like here, you're going to end up with way too little angle on the 2 ball. And remember, you want to go up table to the 8 again. So with that angle, all you pretty much have is playing that really, really hard, stun the cue ball out, and very, very uncontrolled once again. This is why even it's a bit unnatural to just go with that little angle. Let's repeat that. Even though it's a bit unnatural to force the cue ball all the way over to here, I still like it with the right spin because it's a bit easier to end up with an angle on the 2 ball. And this was, ooh, that was really lucky. So you can see you have to weigh up the percentages. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to force the cue ball around and give yourself a bit of a bigger window? Or do you prefer to just go 1 rail where you have to work a bit on your speed control? Long story short, this is not the angle we wanted to have on the 8 ball. So let's get back all the way to the beginning and try to end up with a natural angle on the 8 ball. So now with that angle, you see we were traveling a bit too far to here. So it would be nice if the cue ball travels a bit further to here, that we definitely have the natural angle. And this is why I'm adding just the tiniest amount of right spin on that shot. Really, just 1/4 of a tip maybe. Well, let's see how that works. That's nice. That's really good. And you can see already this tiny, tiny bit of change in cue ball movement from here to here now give us the most natural angle on the 8 ball to just come 2 rails. Now thinking about 2 rails, cue balls should go to here, to here. You can see if you're hitting the 2nd rail too early, the cue ball comes out like this. So you have to keep in mind, you have to plan ahead that the cue ball needs to hit a bit more here, that you're not left with too much angle, but with a very makeable angle. So let's see how we can accomplish that. The more right spin you're using, you can see with the right spin, the cue ball goes more to here because it goes to the right. So the further you're gonna hit here, so you don't need a whole lot of right spin here. That's important. So let's see, high, well, not even 1/4 of a tip of right spin, I would say. Still hit a bit too early here, but I mean, it was still good. Cue ball travels a really nice line. I will always have an angle on the 2 ball, but I would say, let's not repeat that. It doesn't always go 100% as planned, and keep shooting from here. Okay, interesting decision, because now the cue ball has a natural angle to come this line, but the problem is, if I'm trying to stop the cue ball here, because remember, we once again want to have an angle, and basically do the same from here, leave the cue ball here, come 2 rails towards that free ball. But if I want to keep the cue ball here, let's see how difficult this gets, because I'm far away and I have a fin cut. So I have to hit it super soft, which turned out good in that case, but it's a bit risky, a bit tricky. So once again, you have to evaluate here. Do you want to slow roll that ball and end up with, in that case, it was perfect? Or do you prefer, maybe if you have even a bit more angle, but even here, do you prefer to just let your stroke out a bit more like this? Come to the short rail and then bounce back out. It's a bit, yeah, once again, this depends on your personal skill level, on what you're feeling more comfortable with. This now traveled a bit too far, so I even hit it a bit too hard, but the shot before was fine, and even here the angle is fine. So it depends, once again, there is no right or wrong. I personally think this was just
manageable to slow roll that any more angle, and I definitely would always go for that back and forth. So let's keep going from here. This is missable, this is tricky. Now, keep in mind, still, you want to think 3 shots ahead, at least 3 shots ahead. And this means if you're now going 2 rails, and you're once again trying to hit the second rail around here, where the cue ball travels like this path, then you're going to end up with that angle on the 3 ball. And the problem is now, compared to the balls that are on the short rail, you now have to work to bring the cue ball up. Before, we could just roll it in and it comes up table, but if you're rolling that ball in, it will go somewhere to here. So now you have to work with, in that case, draw. So it's very difficult to bring the cue ball from here all the way up table. So you want to have less angle on the 3 ball, that it's easier to draw the cue ball back to here. And this just simply means this time you want to hit the second rail earlier, that you're ending up with less angle on the 3 ball compared to hitting the second rail later, when you end up with a lot of angle on the 3 ball. Okay, let's give it a try. This one is a bit missable, and very important, I'm gonna focus mostly on making the shot. Would be nice to have a good shape on the 3 ball, but since this shot is a bit more tricky, my main goal is, or always my main goal, of course, is to just make the shot, but I'm not trying to do anything too crazy with the cue ball, too much spin, too slow roll, so I'm not trying to do fancy stuff, even if this means I might have a bit more angle on the 3 ball. Okay. So this is pure left spin, no follow. And this is exactly what I've meant. I could have hidden that a bit harder and bring the cue ball a bit closer, but I had the feeling, or subconsciously at least, I played the shot with the speed where I have the best chances to make the shot, even though this means I'm now a bit too far away from the 3 ball. Does that make sense? So you don't want to lose control. This is just a drill right now, right? But in a match, you want to make the ball first and then carry about position. I mean, in the best case, both is perfect, but if I have to sacrifice one thing, of course, I'm not sacrificing making the ball, I'm sometimes sacrificing the perfect ball in hand position. Okay, let's keep going. So here, if the 6 and the 4 ball wouldn't be there, what I could do is use a bit of the natural roll of the cue ball, because the cue ball, obviously, if you're just rolling that in, let's try to remember where the cue ball is and show you if I'm just rolling that in. Cue ball wants to go naturally forward, you see? So if those 2 balls wouldn't be there, because they're a big blocker in that case, what I would do is I would support the natural roll of the cue ball and make the cue ball go from here to here, all the way from here, and end up with an angle on the 8 ball. But this is risky with those 2 balls, because obviously you are not allowed to collide into those balls. And even if you were allowed, this can slow the cue ball down and you might even snooker yourself. This is why in that case I have to play it with low and also some supporting left spin, outside spin. And this is really, really tricky, because I have to once again work against the natural roll of the cue ball. Well, let's give it a try. I'm aiming for that line. I could also aim for that line, because this would also be fine if I just bounce out from here. I'm just gonna make a decision here. And I think I'm gonna try to just draw the cue ball directly back, not even hit a rail here, and just leave the cue ball in that area. Either straight on the 8 ball, which would be horrible, so straight is not ideal. So either an angle here, where I can go just 1 rail to here, or with an angle where I once again can go 2 rails. But once again, I'm putting everything else below actually making the shot. So making the shot is the most important thing, even though the position is not perfect, just because the shot is so difficult. So low and left. You can see now I sacrificed the perfect position for actually making the shot. Okay, let's try again. I would say if we end up on the same line on the 4 ball as on the 3 ball, because it's basically the same shot, just not so far away, a bit closer, because the closer you are, the easier
it gets to make the ball and to bring the cue ball back. But once again, it's not the easiest shot in the world. When I come 2 rails, bounce out, and then at least go to center of the table. So high, touch of left spin. Yeah, that's nice. That's really good. That's almost perfect. Now, once again, what could you do here? As I said before, you could use the natural roll of the cue ball and come out like this, but once again, the 5 ball is a really big blocker. So I think I have to do the same. Go low right, bring the cue ball back, leave an angle on the 8 ball. Here would be once again ideal because remember, this 2-rail path is the easiest one to control. I could try to hit that rail and then bounce out, but it's easily overhitten where the cue ball ends up here. If I don't get that nice line and the cue ball tracks towards the side pocket, it would be great if the cue ball doesn't have the speed to even reach the side pocket. This is why I'm trying to not hit the second rail. So it's always a matter of percentages when you're playing position. What can go wrong? Of course, scratching can go wrong. Overhitting the ball can go wrong, so I'm just trying to leave it in this area. Of course, I'm going to pick a point, which would be here, but obviously you're not always getting exactly to the point you're picking. So low right, bit of a stretch. Bit too soft. Line was good. I think here was the point I was picking. And you can see speed control is really huge in that drill, because if your speed isn't on point, your shot making has to be even more on point, because this is once again a bit of a tricky 8 ball. Now, we're coming to the last 2 balls. Here it would be nice to not have a whole lot of angle on a 5 ball, but just to have a bit of an angle where I can just draw the cue ball directly back, where even if I end up all the way anywhere on that line, I will have a shot on the 8 ball. This is why I'm now not using so much right spin. Not even any right spin at all, because the right spin, remember, from that rail changes the direction and brings the cue ball out like this. Without the right spin, the cue ball would hit more like here. Okay, once again, just gonna focus on shot making, bringing the cue ball pretty close to the 5 ball. The draw shot is easier afterwards. So just high. That's fine. I mean, I would prefer with ball in hand to be a tad closer to the 5 ball. I mean, this is fine, but being here would be ideal. I could still reach that and the draw would be easier. No, it's also a bit too little angle. So if you're not careful, you have to hit hard. The ball is gonna rattle in the pocket. So I'm trying to hit the center of the pocket, which is not here, but into that direction now. I might gonna end up a bit too close to the rail, but I'm gonna take that sacrifice as long as I'm getting a bit closer to the rail, to the 8 ball. That was bad. I missed the pocket because I hit into here, and just because of that, the cue ball, you can see that was just a tiny bit of a difference. Now the cue ball is on the rail and we're straight on the 8 ball. So this was the worst case just because I didn't hit the right spot of the pocket. And this is the difference, for example, between snooker and pool, because in pool, you have more margin to cheat the pocket, sometimes to your advantage. Yeah, if you want to create an angle that isn't there, you can cheat the pocket, but in this case, to your disadvantage. I mean, the ball still dropped, but now we're in a horrible position. So all I'm doing here is, of course, I could try to elevate and just bring the cue ball a bit back, but here I'm just gonna sacrifice the position once again and just gonna roll that in. This is already difficult enough. Now, almost done. This is actually ideal because I now have an angle where the cue ball goes away from the rail and not like here where it would go to the rail. So now you have 2 options. This is interesting. Playing a stop shot would obviously give me the best shot making ability, because I don't have to hit so hard. And most players, if they're trying to draw the cue ball now back, they're gonna hit so hard that they completely miss the pocket or that the ball once again rattles in the pocket. So, do I wanna make shot making a bit easier on the 6? Leave the cue ball here for the 8 ball? Or do I wanna draw back? I mean, I could also follow, but the problem is with the follow, the cue ball comes out like this and leaves me for a very long time in no man's land. So I think I'm trying to play a soft draw shot. Not a full draw shot, not a full power draw shot, just a soft one. If it ends in a stop shot, it's okay. If there is actually some draw on the cue ball that brings me closer to the 8 ball, even better. So you can see a nice little drill, really a lot of things that can go wrong. So I want to start with a natural angle where I don't have to use any spin, just to send the ball, just make the shot. And that way the cue ball comes in nicely between the 3 ball and the 2 ball. It would be important to have a bit of an angle on the 2 ball. I don't want to end up too straightish, because now I can just easily roll it in with high, trace of left spin, and come out nicely for the 3 ball into the side pocket. This is perfect. Now I'm just gonna play a center ball with a trace of left spin. The left spin helps me to hit the ball a bit fuller. And now I have the 4 ball into the side pocket. Not ideal, you can see now, tiny bit of a difference makes the whole thing so much more difficult. So I could just try to play a soft shot here, but I think the cue ball is gonna drift to here. This is why I'm gonna hit that rail, come back out, have the 5 ball into the corner pocket. So I probably just want to use the tangent line here with no spin, because the cue ball gets some natural spin from the cut on the 4 ball. If I would have used a touch of right spin, the cue ball comes out like this, which is not what I want to achieve. Now I just want to stun over a tiny bit. Don't want to hit too hard, because I don't want to make the pocket play smaller. Now let's just stun over once again, super soft, because I don't want to drift too far over. This is nice. Now I would love to have the same kind of angle on the 8 ball that I had on the 1 ball. For that I'm gonna use high and right spin. You can see that right spin helped the cue ball to not come out like this, but a bit further into that direction. I think the angle should be ideal. So if I just use a center ball here once again, I'm coming nicely. I want to pass the 9 ball pretty close. This is important. If I'm passing the 9 ball like this, you can see I'm ending up with that angle where I have to work a lot, where I have to stun the ball into the rail. And now I just want to play once again a follow shot. End up straightish on a 10 ball. This would have been straight. So now I have 2 options. I could either try to soft stun it, hold it. The problem is I'm a bit too far away from that. Because of that, I want to go into the rail and back out. So just a high ball. Like that. Bit too far. You can see now it's getting tricky. Because if I'm straight or a bit here, that would be nice. Now I have the wrong angle. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna play in a high ball, trace of right spin here. And try to play that 12 ball into that corner pocket. The right spin here helped me that the cue ball doesn't come out like this, where the cue ball is gone away, but it helped me to have a bit of a straighter 12 ball. Now this is an important shot. I want to just not roll that in, because the cue ball, if I'm falling, will probably roll to here. I don't want to play a stop shot, because then I'm having too much angle. So I just want to play kind of a stun shot, where the cue ball would just stop as if you would play a stop shot. But I want to have a tiny bit of forwards rotation in the ball. This means the cue ball will just go a tiny bit forward. So I'm just hitting a bit above center here. Did you see that, how the cue ball just moved a bit forward? That's a really important shot. Now I want to stun over, leave myself an angle where I can come into the rail. You know what, I'm just gonna play a follow shot with a trace of inside spin. It's a bit easier to control. Now that's perfect. Now I'm just gonna use the tangent line, bring the cue ball to here, and then to here for a straight in shot into the side pocket. Here I don't wanna use spin, because with more spin, you can see I even hit it too hard. With more spin, the cue ball will even gain some more speed and we're ending up here. That is a bit more difficult than it should have been. And here I like to use low right just because I'm most comfortable of making the shot with the low right here. Just like that. All right, let's do something a bit more basic today. This is one of the early drills that I used to play when I started at my local club. The difficulty is you want to have it natural. You want to always give yourself natural angles. So on a one ball, for example, I want to give myself enough angle that I can just come out one rail, center ball with some left spin, and just bring the cue ball out like this. And it would be nice, you can see, to have that angle. Of course, I'm a left-handed player, it's a bit easier for me. But to have that angle, we're going towards that free ball, that would be nice. I mean, it also works with that angle. So let's say you're on that side of the two ball. The only thing is you just have to work a bit more. You sometimes don't get that close to the free ball, but you will definitely have the angle to go from the free ball to the four ball, because this is gonna be important. So let's continue from where we left. So I had this angle. This is nice because now you can see once again I'm just using right spin, pure right spin on the cue ball, and I wanna give myself an angle. And here I basically have the same angle on the free ball. I'm just a bit closer, so this is nice. Okay, important shot. I want to come out. I don't want to end up straight on the four ball. That's very important. I don't want to end up with that angle where I'm coming into the ball, where I'm making contact with the five ball. So I pretty much want to come out something like this. Better too much angle than too little angle. And for that, well, once again, right spin a bit below center on that one. And you can see now, once again, I have a nice angle on the four ball. This drill is all about angles, where I can actually come nicely out of the rail. Here, don't be worried, you're not gonna make contact with the five ball. I'm still gonna put a touch of right spin on the ball, and I have a bit too much angle. This is why I'm gonna go two rails here. You see, just like that, and I'm fine. I mean, this time I don't have the angle where I'm here, but I'm a left-handed player, so I left myself that angle intentionally. So once again, I just want to come into the rail, and I don't want to end up straight on the six ball. This is important. This is now just a high ball. Added a trace of left spin, which was not intentional, and this is why I now ended up with a bit too little angle on the six ball. Because here would be nice. Just have a look what happens if I'm just rolling that ball in with high. From that angle, you can see now I'm very far away from the seven, and this is not what I want to have. Now imagine I had a bit more angle on a six ball and I'm just playing that in with high and the same stroke. You can see how much easier I'm actually getting down to the seven ball. This is important. This is why I'm always telling you, you gotta think about the angles, and angles are definitely your friend. Yes, I know if you're still a beginner, shot making gets a bit more complicated with angles, and you're a bit more likely to make the shot without any angle, but eventually you're gonna really appreciate the angles. But we ended up in this position, so we have to work with that. Now, this is a bit more of an advanced shot. You have two options. You could go, because you have to hit a bit harder. You want to basically end with that angle here. Remember, we don't want to end up straight. We don't want to end up with that angle. I mean, it would work, but this angle is perfect. So I basically have two options here. I could go high right. Which looks like this. But the problem is,
I'm a bit far away. Now I can't just work with spin. I probably have also to use a bit of low on the cue ball, so it would be nice to get a bit closer to the ball. So here would be ideal. How could I accomplish that? Well, by just hitting a bit lower and a bit less right spin on the cue ball. You can see now the cue ball takes a bit of a different path, but it's easily overhitten. This would still be okay. This would actually be nice, maybe a bit too much angle. So this is the first option, how you can actually recover from that bad angle we had here. And the second option, if you have too little angle, doesn't work with too much angle, is you could actually go low and left, hit the rail here, and then come into the line of the 7 ball. You can see it would look like this. The good news is you can control the angle you want to have a bit better, because it just depends on where exactly you're hitting that rail. If you're hitting here, you're gonna have less angle all the time. If you're hitting a bit more here, you're gonna have more angle all the time. This was basically perfect. So here you're coming into the line of the 7 ball, whereas with the high right, you're basically crossing the line, and the exact angle you're gonna have is not very predictable. This one, the low left, is a bit more difficult to execute though. Very often you're gonna miss or you're gonna lose the cue ball. But let's keep going from here. Now with that angle, I can't just use left spin. This would be the angle where I can just use left spin, because now the cue ball wants to go a bit more forwards, because I'm shooting into that direction. This means the cue ball wants to travel a bit more forwards compared to here. So this is why I also have to use a bit of low on the cue ball. So it's a bit more difficult to judge and to predict the exact cue ball path. Execution is a bit more difficult, and just because of that, you can see I ended up a bit too straight on the 8 ball, but I can't just stun it over. I also want to draw it a bit back, just like that. You can see that was nice. Now it's the perfect angle where I once again want to go. Remember, same as here. I want to go out with just right spin in that case. Cue ball needs to stop. This was bad. Now you can see once again I can't just roll it in. I have too little angle. Now I have to force the cue ball again. This is why I'm always telling you that angles are your friends. Just let's show you here. Here just right spin. Works perfectly. Comes just naturally out because the cue ball doesn't want to go forward. And now leave the cue ball where it is. Now if I'm just using right spin here, look what happens. I'm gonna bump into the 11 because the cue ball wants to go more into that direction. This is why the cue ball pushes the after the rail more into that direction compared where the cue ball is coming from here. Comes out, it doesn't want to go as strongly into that direction. I hope that makes sense to you. So this is why we have to work with low, with stun, and I just want to stun the cue ball out just a bit below center, just like that, and I underhit the shot. Now I have to work. You can see this is why it's so much more difficult to judge. So now we actually have to play a recovery shot, but this is a perfect example. I can't hold the cue ball here, it's just too much of a cut. So this is why I'm trying to extend the line. I think if the cue ball is gonna hit that rail here, we have a good chance to come down table. So no spin on the cue ball here. I just focus on making the shot, which is really difficult in that case. And I don't want to scratch. I was lucky. Could have used a bit of left spin to avoid the scratch because we hit here. I tried to hit here. The left spin would have helped me to hit here. This would have taken the scratch completely out of the equation. All right, nice little drill. Helps you working on your angle management, on your speed control of your just spin shots, managing angles. So a great drill. Give it a try. Let me know how you like it in the comments.
And if you actually made it all the way to here in this video, then let me know in the comment section as well. If you want to learn more about pool, by the way, then check my videos on this channel. I have over 250 videos on how to play pool. For example, how to aim with side spin. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you at the next lesson. Take care.